Askren versus Jake Paul. Yes, it's the fight we've all been talking about, the fight we've all been waiting for, the fight that most of us, some of us in the mixed martial arts community hoped would never happen, but it is finally here. It is happening, guys. Yes, it's just happening in just a few hours from now. From now, the 16th of April 2021 here in the UK that I'm recording this podcast. So, at first, we all thought that Jake Paul would beat Ben Askren, but as time's gone on since January, since the fight was made official, people's opinions have been changing, especially after the first press conference, and it's changed even more after the second press conference. But for me personally, I think that, although I know there's a lot counting against this guy, I am hoping that Ben Askren will put this kid to sleep. We'll put him to bed, put him to sleep, and just shut him up permanently with regards to mixed martial arts and with regards to combat sports, because it's annoying that someone who hasn't put in the hard work that other combat sporting athletes in boxing, in jiu-jitsu, BJJ, grappling, judo, and mixed martial arts, the big one, it's annoying that someone like this, Jake Paul, can just come in there more or less, waltz in there and start claiming he can beat up Conor McGregor, Dylan Dennis, Khabib, and even Ben Askren. It's obvious he chose Ben Askren. He's admitted it himself. No, probably not. But if I make that mistake, but he's admitted that. Did he admit? No, he probably didn't admit. But even Ben Askren, he has admitted indirectly that his striking just isn't that good. He knows his striking is bad. It's one of the biggest flaws he has with regards to combat sports in MMA, especially where MMA is concerned. And also, he's picked Ben Askren because his striking isn't great, and it's an easy way to break into the combat sporting world, especially mixed martial arts. And again, Ben Askren has admitted that his striking isn't great. It's one of the biggest flaws that he has. He wishes that it was better. Even I thought when I saw that the fight had been made official way back in January 2021, when I saw that promotional poster, I thought, okay, this guy's striking is better. And I actually went back to watch one of his past videos. Not the Jorge Masvidal one that just ran in there with a flying knee and knocked Ben Askren out within 5 seconds of the first round. I actually went back to watch his fights, all the fights in the UFC and Bellator and in One Championship, and I could see why people are so against this guy. Were so against this guy going up against Jake Paul. His striking isn't good. It's not good at all. But his ground game is great. He's great with wrestling. He's great with grappling. That's what he's known for. He's a world champion when it comes to wrestling and grappling. To the really physical element of combat sports. That you may disagree with that terminology I'm using, but okay, when it comes to things like wrestling and grappling, in that regard he's great. When it comes to striking, where boxing is concerned, that is the core fundamental element, the core fundamental basis of boxing. In boxing you must work with your hands. In mixed martial arts, you can work with your hands, you can work with your elbows, your legs, for the kicks, you can work with your knees, for the flying knees, you can work with your feet, even for stamping on your opponent's feet. You have much more flexibility and use a lot more of your, far more, you have basically in mixed martial arts, hence the terminology, the title, mixed martial arts, there's far more, you have more options you can use to attack your opponent, also more options you can use to defend yourself against your opponent. And boxing, unfortunately, is not like that. You must really work solely with your hands, but of course you can work with your hands, and you can also move as well to just dodge the attacks coming from your opponent. So these two guys, I personally believe that Ben Askren will win. And if I can sum up with this summary that I'll give you, Askren has a lot more experience in combat sports than Jake Paul does. And Jake Paul, if you look on Wikipedia, if you look all over the internet, he's been titled this professional boxer. I don't think he's a professional boxer, because the last two boxing fights that he had weren't even up against proper elite level boxers or elite level combat sporting athletes. They weren't. They were just amateur boxers, and both fights were exhibition fights. Ben Askren is a whole different ball game, because Ben Askren is an elite level mixed martial artist. He is, despite his poor striking, he is an elite level combat sports athlete. He is. Has a lot more experience than Jake Paul. He's fought for more than at least 20 plus years in numerous fighting organizations around the world, namely the UFC that he's currently signed with now, one championship, and Bellator, and he's been a two-time welterweight champion for both one championship and for Bellator. Yeah. So I'll just outline the reasons. Starting with Ben Askren, he is a professional He's a professional combat sporting athlete, far more experienced in combat sports. He's fought in numerous organizations worldwide. He's a welterweight champion in both organizations, one championship and Bellator. His striking isn't great, and that's nothing new. Okay, there's nothing to hide at all. He has a lot more experience in when fighting elite level athletes in terms of, in combat sports, and because of the experience he has, despite, I keep repeating this point, despite the bad striking, when it comes to things such as how you attack your opponent, how you defend yourself against your opponent, you have more experience there as well, despite your losses. Things such as, and this is something I was always taught and told by my coaches during a kickboxing session. When you're throwing a punch, when you're going to attack your opponent, you've got to know how to breathe so you conserve your energy as much as possible. You can be the biggest guy or girl in the room there, and you're fighting your opponent in the cage or the ring, and you have all that power. But if you don't use that power efficiently, if you don't use that power wisely, then you're wasting that energy, and before you know it, before you know it, you're losing the round because you're gassed out. You're tired. Now, Jake Paul, he's only had 2 boxing matches against 2 amateur boxers, and that's, again, I go back to the point that I made earlier, that would you really, because he's had 2 boxing matches, would you really consider this guy to be a professional boxer? I personally wouldn't. He hasn't had that much experience in combat sports. He hasn't fought in really any proper organization anywhere in the world. His striking is good. That's the one thing I have to admit. That I've got to admit. His striking is good. It is better than Ben Askren's. I know it makes sense as to why he chose Ben Askren, who in combat sports is a big name, especially in MMA. Big name in the combat sporting world, particularly where mixed martial arts is concerned. But his striking, unfortunately, works against him. So it does make sense. It does make, business-wise, it makes sense as to why Jake Paul went for the lowest hanging fruit, as even Ben Askren has been saying. And I agree. That's how Jake Paul's probably using Ben Askren as a stepping stone to just gradually muscle his way into the sport of mixed martial arts and gradually get close to the bigger names such as Conor McGregor. And Conor McGregor and other guys, Dylan Dennis and other guys, they're even in mixed martial arts, anything's possible. Even maybe Khabib, if Khabib wants to come out of retirement anytime soon. We never know. I could be wrong. You never know. And yeah, because of his lack of experience in his longevity, which hasn't been long in combat sports at all. He's just had 2 boxing matches and that's it. It's my assumption, it's my belief that when he's in the ring there with Ben Askren, despite the clear significant difference in the striking capabilities of the two men, I won't say athletes, of the two guys, he's going to get tired quicker. Ben Askren, I'm sure, will have more experience and enough sense to know that you've got to conserve your energy as much as you can do, so you can survive the entire fight. You can survive as many rounds as possible without gassing out. And even before you do gas out, you try and win. And out of the 2 guys, who do I think has a lot more to lose? Jake Paul has far more to lose in this than Ben Askren does. I mean, Ben Askren isn't really, even though he's currently signed up as an active fighter with the UFC, he's retired. Though I think the contract hasn't run its full course yet. So I mean, for Ben Askren, this fight was just something he probably just took as just as a hobby. Jake Paul, however, did not take this fight on as a hobby because he has something to prove in this fight. He wants to prove that he's a professional boxer. In my eyes, he's not a professional boxer. He hasn't fought enough boxing matches against elite level combat sports athletes, or at least elite level boxers, to at least earn that title of a professional boxer. And also, again, as I've been saying before, he's trying to muscle his way into a particular market, boxing or mixed martial arts, and to prove himself. So if he loses this match, if he loses against Ben Askren, who in the combat sporting world, especially in the mixed martial arts community, is seen as someone who has very, very poor striking capabilities, then, it's going to look very, very embarrassing for Jake Paul. And I've been saying this to many other people who follow the sport like I do. It's going to look very, very embarrassing for Jake Paul. It's something he'll never be able to live down. For someone who runs their mouth like no one's business, when you talk like, from my experience, when someone talks like the way Jake Paul talks, and when something bad happens to them, when they're saying that they can do this, they can do that, when they finally do that thing that they're going to do, and unfortunately it doesn't work out for them, the result doesn't go in their favor, doesn't go their way at all, doesn't work out in their favor. The embarrassment is that much more, severe. It hurts me even more, because when after this match, come April 18th on a Sunday morning, if he is lost, and if he's lost to Ben Askren, and I'm wondering what his fans will think of him. That this is someone who goes around just making stupid videos on YouTube, doing stupid stuff. Surprisingly, the feedback seems positive. A lot of people are watching, hence the sponsors and the ad deal and the adverts, the TV adverts come along as well. His content makes money, but I'm just wondering what his fans will think of him. They'll think this person's all talk, and really, they just know how to talk. Really, this person is an individual that is the perfect example of, my image is all I have. They can't really do anything else apart from act stupid on TV. So it's like when he's boxing Ben Askren, if he does lose, it's like saying you couldn't beat. How do I put this together in a sentence? You couldn't beat the worst of the best, as in the best. You're trying to muscle your way into particular sport, particular market, and you chose the easiest target, the lowest hanging fruit, and even then you couldn't succeed. That says a lot about you, especially when you're talking yourself up so much, and whilst you're talking yourself up so much, you're talking the other person down. That sort of bully tactic. People don't really like it. It does sell the sport. It does sell the event. Okay, it does market the event quite well, because then unfortunately bad news travels like wildfire, and if he does lose this fight, excuse me, it's getting a bit dark outside. If he does lose this fight, for him it will look far more embarrassing for him than it will be for Ben Askren. Jake Paul will have a lot more to lose in this fight if he loses the boxing match up against Ben Askren, especially since Ben Askren is a particular combat sports athlete that he's not good with his hands. He's not good with his hands at all. Although between January of 2021 and April of this year, I was under the assumption that maybe, just maybe, that it's enough time to improve your boxing as much as possible, improve your striking, what you can do. But I've spoken to other people and just gotten their own opinion on other combat sports athletes, other boxers, and they've said no. It's basically, it comes down to either you got it or you haven't got it. It's just one of those things. But again, I'm placing my bet on Ben Askren. Although I'm placing my bet on Ben Askren, I believe he will win this. He will win this. He does win this, he will receive so much respect in the mixed martial arts community. But again, with combat sports, let's just wait and see what happens. Now, on the last UFC event, there was the fight between Mike Perry and, I cannot even believe that I've forgotten his name. But what I want to talk about is Mike Perry and his performance in mixed martial arts, especially in the UFC. And it's no news that he has actually lost more fights than he's won. The number of fights that he's won still doesn't match up, or it doesn't exceed the number of fights that he's lost. And a lot of people, well, I was going to say a lot of people, no, it's just myself. I've been wondering just what is it that was the problem that he has, that he just can't compete and do well in this sport, despite what he may be like outside. But what I'm going to say, the sorts of things I'm going to say in this podcast, at least in this at this point in the episode, kind of contradicts what I've said. That it can be things are happening inside the octagon and also outside the octagon as well, because excuse me, everything does affect you mentally. So I had made a whole list of this. So Mike Perry, so the guy didn't have the best start in life. Where he grew up, the school he attended, I think he was the only white student there, so he was bullied a lot, and he didn't have a great time. He did, it wasn't a great time for him. There's the issues with the racial and homophobic slurs, that he's using the N-word, all because he did he did some research on his ancestry, and he found out that he was 2% African, so he thought it was okay that he has the privilege, was it the privilege or the right to use the N-word, the word nigger. And for me, when I heard that, it did baffle me somewhat. I mean, I am of African descent, although I've not really done any deep digging into my own ancestry to find out if there's any other traits or any other contributions to my background from Europe, from North America, from Latin America or Asia. I've not done that, but I do know that majority of my background is from Africa, from West Africa. But even then, I've never used the word nigger when I'm talking with a black person, even my brother, my mother, or any of my family relatives, or any of my black friends. Never. It's just never crossed my mind to speak in that. But not that. Do I find it offensive? I don't think so. I mean, I've seen certain situations whereby the word has been used, and probably they think they probably are hoping to achieve some offense. They're hoping that any of the non-whites and any white people that around will be so offended by it. But to be honest, I've always found it quite funny. Just be rolling around laughing. But that's just me. But for me, myself, being of someone who is of West African descent, I've just never used that terminology. It's just never crossed my mind. So moving on, his ex-wife, the Platinum Princess. Now, she was his girlfriend, and she was his coach, and she was his corner woman. And I have to say that one example of how probably this may contribute to his poor performance in mixed martial arts of late is probably the fight he had with Max Griffin. I think in the corner that they were comparing how she was speaking to him, whilst comparing how the corner of, I'm not going to talk about a different fight now. Get your story straight. It's the same fight. I think they compared how his corner was speaking to him, his corner when it was his girlfriend, and then comparing how another opponent or another fighter in a different fight, Dustin Poirier, how his corner, which was, not that it means anything, but they're all male coaches and it was male staff, how they were speaking to him. Dustin Poirier's corner was being very realistic and blunt. You gotta do this, you gotta hit the opponent here. But they're being really honest, telling Dustin Poirier, you need to do this to win the fight, at least to gain as many points as possible. And Mike Perry's corner was basically his girlfriend was telling him that you're doing great, you're doing just fine, this and that. Well, clearly you can see that the poor guy is not performing well in that fight at all. His face is a mess, and he doesn't feel great. But he's not winning the fight basically. So that, I'm sure, has been another contribution to the reasons to why he's not been performing so well. There was an instance whereby I think a particular fighter, a particular actor was there was a clip of Michael J. White and the late Kimbo Slice were filming a particular scene, and I think Kimbo Slice wasn't doing a particular fighting. God, I've forgotten what it is, but I think it was called telegraphing, and Kimbo Slice probably wasn't performing it properly as well as he should have done or could have been doing so. And Michael J. was explaining to him how he could do it better, and Mike Perry saw the video and he weighed in on it, whereby he didn't have to say anything at all. And that's just the reason why I bring that up, is because that's just an example of whereby you see two guys talking about something. You can put your input there if you want to, but then again, you can avoid any potential confrontation or any potential bad blood by just keeping your mouth shut. I'm not going to say what I would do, but if you're someone that is easily volatile and someone who whereby someone can easily tick you off. If you're the sort of person who has a short fuse, then if you see two people talking about something you don't necessarily agree on, or you don't necessarily agree on their opinions or what the one person or what one of them is saying, you can keep your mouth shut and just mind your own business. Because Michael Jay White did say something back to Mike Perry, and it did set him off. So, and then yes, there's the one that everybody knows about, the Darren Till situation, whereby him and Darren Till were sparring one day, I think back in 2017 or 18 or so it was, and I think Mike Perry won. He came out as a stronger person in that sparring session. I think he was blabbing about it and just boasting about it here and there, blah blah blah. But Darren Till said on the James English podcast, that's where I heard it. He said that, you know, that's fine if it makes Mike Perry feel good, then that's okay. But for the fact there was a sparring session, the fact that something private that nobody saw it, you wouldn't pay for doing that. So it means absolutely nothing, meaningless, and it's actually really childish of Mike Perry to go around just running his mouth and saying he beat Darren Till this and then, broke his nose and broke his face, and trying to over egg the pudding and to embellish the story as much as possible to make him look better out of the two. So you know, and for someone like Darren Till, who after what Mike Perry did, trolled Mike Perry to the core after doing that. So because Darren Till is known to get under people's skin, but I think he really was trying to emphasize the point that Mike Perry should have done the mature thing as an adult and just kept quiet about it, because it's a private thing. You're not being paid for it. It's behind closed doors. No one's seen it. It's not in front of a crowd. Nothing like that. It's not public or staged. So, you know, there's no reason to go and run your mouth about it or blab about it and try and make him look like a bad person, to make Darren Till look like he's a weakling. So that's just a point that I'm saying there. So after his last fights, which God, even now as I can't remember, it was at UFC Vegas 23. Yes, UFC Vegas 23. Can't forgot that UFC Vegas 23. Basically, he I think he's now got a new coach going by the name of Daniel Valverde at the MMA Masters gym. And the question is, does Mike Perry need better coaching? More than likely, I'll say yes, because I mean, unless if there's a deeper problem happening in your life, I would say that when it comes to something like sports, yes. Well, I say if there's a deeper thing happening in your life. I mean, Mike Perry just became a father to a newly born son, so you'd have thought actually that would have prompted him to actually to be, you know, a better man, because now as a father he is now naturally seen as a role model by someone else. So you would have thought that actually, you know, he needs to step up his game and, you know, change his character and start being far more mature and start behaving like a man, like an adult and like a mature man. So yeah, but okay, in terms of coaching, what I just said about the son should actually, the point I was making, that basically that's something that actually should make him, when it comes to doing something like the mixed martial arts, the fighting, that's what he does for a living, you know, you would have thought actually would make him step up his game and perform better in the cage and the octagon. But so far, based on the last fight, and I thought in the last fight he would actually win, because he's got the size and the size, he's got a strong chin, and he throws some very heavy punches, Mike Perry. So I thought he would win, but that wasn't the case. Okay, so after seeing that, I thought, okay, he probably needs a better coaching. And he's recently got himself a new coach, Daniel Valverde, at a gym known as MMA Masters. So hopefully that will help, especially now that he's a father. He wants to, you know, be a better man, because naturally he's a role model and he has someone else who's looking up to him, who is watching how he does things, who eventually is going to mimic the things that his father's doing. So, as well as having Ben Askren fight Jake Paul this weekend, we also have UFC Vegas 24. So, the main card, we've got Robert Whittaker versus Calvin Gastelum. So, Whittaker, when he fought Jared Cannonier at UFC 254. So Whittaker did look good, good stand up. He looks like it seems like a patient calculating fighter, just looking for the right time to rush in there and attack, to land a blow, land a strike. He does, when he does attack, he does use surprise counter strikes and kicks, and he does seem quite effectively evasive. And what else did I write here? Yeah, I think for this fight, looking at the other guy, Kelvin Gastelum, he has a really good ground game. He's really good on the ground with grappling and wrestling. Stand up seems good. His takedowns, from what I could see from his past fights, were dangerous, and he has no trouble. Taking his opponents down. He's a good wrestler and he seems like an all-rounded fighter. But from what I can see out of the two, it will be close. But I'd probably say, if I was a betting person, if I had to place money on either one of these two guys, I'd probably place my money on Kelvin. But I think it'll be close. Calvin has 16 wins and 6 losses, and his coach, Rafael Claduda, is a well-renowned coach for wrestling. So it's probably one of the reasons as to why Gastelum has really good wrestling skills and has really good ground game. But Whittaker is also a force to be reckoned with. Has an impressive record of 22 wins and 5 losses. So I think it will be close. But I think if there has to be a winner, probably it will be Gastelum. But let's wait and see what happens, because in MMA, from what I've seen, anything can happen. After that, it's Jeremy Stephens and Drakkar Klose. Excuse me, Jeremy Stephens and Drakkar Klose. So I will point out that Jeremy Stephens, looking at his record, he had 5 fights that he lost. His past 5 fights he lost. One of them was due to no contest. So probably you could say past 4 fights he lost. And that was against Yair Rodriguez at UFC FIGHTNIGHT 159. But his stand-up seems pretty decent. His opponent, on the other hand, however, seems to be he has a good stand-up, and it seems to be the sort of guy that likes to keep his opponents close, and he seems to be able to defend himself well in the clinch. And he's a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I didn't check the belt ranking for Jeremy Stephens, but one thing I have to say about Stephens is that with all those losses behind you, those recent losses, it's getting really dark here. With all those recent losses behind you under your belt, I'm wondering if he does lose this fight at UFC Vegas 24, will Dana White cut him? Will the UFC cut him? Because despite how good you are, despite your longevity in the sport, if you've got so many recent losses, then usually I think it's not uncommon for the fighting organization to cut you. Moving on. So Andrei Arlovsky versus Chase Sherman. So Arlovsky, it will be, for me this will be an interesting fight, because first of all, there's a big age difference between the two. Shit, it's so dark outside. There's a big age difference between the two. Arlovsky is 42 years old, Sherman's 31. So Sherman probably still has youth on his side. Arlovsky is still probably way out age-wise, is way out there, and just isn't too far from retirement. Although we do have some athletes such as Anderson Silva, who was still fighting at 46. So it was almost like by force he had to be retired by force. So Arlovsky, from his previous fights, he seems able to defend himself well in the clinch. Seems like a much more patient fighter and striker. He lands heavy shots, and my only query in this fight is that because of the age difference, how good will Arlovsky's recovery be because of the age difference? Although I've seen one example of this, Glover Teixeira, when he fought, I think was it Thiago Santos, I'm not sure, last year. Teixeira's about the same age as Arlovsky, and Thiago Santos was about 36, 37. So the age difference there isn't so much, but still I think it's an age difference about 5 or 6 years. But in that fight, I thought Teixeira was actually going to be the loser, but that didn't turn out to be the case. He did win. Although towards the end, I was just throughout the whole fight, I thought no, Teixeira definitely is not gonna. This isn't looking good for Teixeira. But towards the end, he completely changed the whole game. Now Chase Sherman, he's good with counter striking, and the counter strikes do look pretty nasty. You wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of those. Stand up is good, and so far he's had a four fight winning streak on his belt. So this will be an interesting one for me, especially because of the age difference, because that does determine how well your recovery is after being attacked. So for me, it'll be an interesting watch. Moving on, Abdul Razak Hassan versus Jacob Macon. So Hassan, one of his last fights at UFC Vegas 14, he got knocked out in less than 30 seconds in the first round. But looking at his other fights, he seems to be a good counter striker. Stand up seems good. I think in this sport, your stand up has to be good if you're gonna make any progress at all. His ground game seems okay. It's not bad. His opponent, Macon, stand up didn't seem, at least to me anyway, didn't seem that great. But he seems like sort of an athlete that when he's attacking his opponent, just goes straight in there and just does as much damage as possible. And his ground game does seem to be pretty on point. So I think I've covered all the fights. I think there's anything else I've not covered. Yeah, so again, guys, sorry about the lighting for watching this on YouTube. I did plan to actually record this sooner, but I was just finishing off my research, especially for the Ben Askren JAKEPAUL fights happening just in mere hours from now. So I apologize for the lighting. I would have done it sooner, but that research was just really overrunning. I just wanted to make sure I got as much information as possible to make sure the podcast was as good as possible. So guys, if you did enjoy my content, if you did enjoy the video, please don't forget to leave a like. Don't forget to also to subscribe. It really helps me when you do that. And you can also catch my podcast on Spotify, on SoundCloud, on Google Podcasts, and on Apple Podcasts as well. It's nearly there, but for some reason, I think the Apple people, the iTunes, them and their server still reviewing all my content just to make sure everything's kosher, I'm assuming, before it's officially going to be uploaded to the platform. And you can follow me on Instagram. My name's Ojiako1. On Twitter, my name's Ojiako, and on Facebook, my name's also Ojiako as well. Thanks, guys.